A very good evening, and I thank you all for being here with us on the 118 webinar being hosted by Nisbat. I extend my warm welcome to the eminent speakers as well as to all the delegates from various countries who have come to join us at this webinar. As you see, the caption of webinar is extremely important for all of us to solve problems, and I'm sure the delegates, the registered delegates, others will be able to carry home a lot of points from the deliberations of the learned speaker. Before we proceed with the webinar, I'd like to introduce Nisbat. I'm the president of Nisbat, National Institute of Security, Safety, Management and Applied Technology, was established about 3 decades back in 1990. We started our basic courses in safety, security, and management concerning security. Similarly, applied technology concerning security and safety. With the passage of time, we started having courses for the ex-defense forces personnel for their second career in the private security industry and gave them training in the private security subjects. We also had collaboration with IGNU and conducted a number of courses on fire services. As you know that nowadays innovation is the key word, and everyone wants to have a competitive advantage by certain innovative measures. So we also our organization thought of going into some research and research cell and a think tank. This research cell and think tank has been established by us in the Nisbat. We have also laid down parameters for us for further growth. We are going to have it 4 segments of 4 points of interest for the people. First segment is, which is concerning Nisbat Forum. That is this forum which we are here conducting webinars, seminars, conferences, interaction sessions, debates, rewards, and eminent personalities will be called here to speak to the audience. The second segment, the second point which we wanted to emphasize, and we made it a different segment, was in terms of Nisbat Academy, that is Nisbat Edu. Nisbat Edu means we are going to have some virtual training courses, virtual assessment, and research. This virtual assessment and training courses will be based on the subjects which the research scholar have brought it forth to us, which will not have the normal, which will concern safety, security, but some innovative thing, some innovative thinking. And on that basis, we'll have some courses, innovative courses, and it will be virtual courses, virtual assessment. The third segment we intend to have is actually the business enterprise. That is, business enterprise for the Nisbat would mean the Nisbat will have certain alliances. That is the third segment, alliances, partnership on certain issues which concerns the partners and concern us, which concerns the outside countries, concern us. That is on risk management, risk mitigation, loss prevention, and also the subjects. That is, we are going to have into Nisbat. And Nisbat Enterprise will also help us promote the Nisbat Forum as well as Nisbat Education. And the last we have conceived and hope to get into is the Nisbat Foundation. The Nisbat Foundation will be a sort of trust where we like to indulge ourselves into various social activities, various needs of children, needs of the girls, unwed girls, so some sort of social program. We already chalked out the program. That is our ultimate. So ultimately, Nisbat aspires to be one of the global institutions, and our research scholars shall identify different ingredients of safety, security, management, and applied technology. And on the basis of their research, we'll go ahead and make ourselves globally prominent. Now, a few words about the chairman. Mr. Pawan Ahluwalia is actually Captain Pawan Ahluwalia. He sought retirement from the regiment, which is very, very daredevil regiment of the army. They say parachute regiment at a very young age. And he went into the business career. He jumped into business career. He started at a very modest level, but today he is one of the known eminent businessmen in the country, and particularly on these subjects. And he has under his belt a number of other organizations. Most of our offices, many of our offices, as I call, are located all over the country, but few of them are located outside the country also. As a young officer, he left his almost, he thought that probably he should jump into business. I mean, he had a quite a illustrious career because most of his colleagues are today lieutenant generals and generals who are here with us, some of them. And he would have probably achieved that. But he is the one of person who keeps going ahead, learning, doing, and that trust which he gives to the organization and to people who are working under him has given him this prominence, and he has become one of the most important businessmen in risk, security, and management industry. Ladies and gentlemen, I would tell about him that he is a ex-chairman of the CIA Governing Council. That's a council of investigator, international investigator. He was also awarded two awards, Malcolm Award and another award for his outstanding services to these two organization. He's also the governor of the CAPSI, Central Association of Private Security Industry, and is deeply associated with the Association of Private Detectives. I know him for the last more than 20 years. I find him a very humble, soft, genteel, but at the same time, very, very pushing. He'll not like to mix his goals with something like that. All right, somebody has done. No, he's that achiever. That achiever he is, and he is going to moderate our session. In fact, after giving this bit, I would like to introduce the subject of today's. Today's subject, as you find, is the way we look at the problem is the problem. Now, personal relationships, business partnerships, family disputes, anywhere, anywhere in your working conditions or your family environment, you will come across some problems. Now, a number of times you are stuck up as to how to solve a problem confronting you. Now, I had seen a line from Einstein, which is something identical to the subject which you are saying. He had said, the problem is to know what is the problem. And in this case, we're saying the problem is how to look at the problem. We are asking to look at the problem. He says the problem is to know what is the problem. I mean, it's almost identical. The problem we face cannot be solved at the same level on which we are thinking. There are always deep, fundamental reasons, preconceptions, which cannot be solved at one level only or one way of thinking. We need to look at different and deeper levels to solve a problem. I would say that most of us have to start from our inside outside to solve a problem. First of all, find yourself as to whether you are going to looking at the problem in the way it is, or it is something else. From inside outside is the solution, I feel, in most of the cases. And this shift, you will find, will bring a dramatic change in solving your problems. The understanding as to what other wants, that is the most important thing, and shall provide you a solution as to what other want. If you come to know what other want, that can provide you a solution. In this respect, I like to quote my favorite poet, John Keats. I'm a student of literature. And John Keats, they called it a negative capability. The negative capability was that he will dissolve himself entirely into the other man, into other subject, into other material. Supposing he'll see a sparrow pecking some grains here and there, his entire personality will go into the sparrow and he'll start looking as if he's a sparrow. That is why he's called a very sensitive poet. and he could dissolve himself, and then by dissolution, it was evolvement. He would evolve, and he will be able to give you creative literature, creative thinking. So my point is that evolving yourself, which is creative capability, is there only once you are able to put yourself into the person who is asking you to solve the problem. And what is required to achieve this? By and large, general things are that you should be resilient. Yes. You should be looking forward. Yes. You forget for a while what you want, but see what others want. Looking at the problem from different perspective, then rename the problem without losing the actual problem. Renaming the problem is very important because sometimes we give a negative thought, oh, there is a lot of attrition, the people are leaving, the staff is leaving. Instead of that, you rename it as if there's a subject of staff turnover. When you talk staff turnover, this is a positive look. Instead of there's all attrition, people are leaving this. Or either rename or reformulate the issue. Now tackle the issue from core to outwards instead of outward to core. Now, there's a reformulating issue and be open-minded, etc. Compartmentalizing the problem, yes, to some extent, but ultimately it has to be a holistic thinking on the problem. The old story we know of an elephant looking at blind people looking at elephant, talking different, everyone thinking this is elephant, but that is what they think it is. So it has to become to have a holistic view in day-to-day life. We start giving solution to the problem as per our perception, as I told you. You have to redefine your language. You have to break the old grid. You may have to navigate and then find solution. Actually, the very way and the way you see the problem is, of course, the problem. You are seeing the problem is the problem. With these words, I'm sure the speakers of today shall deliberate very, very intelligently with their erudition, with their scholarship, and make us learn much more. With these words, I pass on the proceedings to our moderator, Captain Pamanjeet Ahluwalia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd begin with thanking the participants from various countries. Today we have participants from, besides India, we have from the United States, Singapore, Pakistan, Australia, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Canada, Kenya, South Africa, Spain, Sweden, UK, and Zambia. At the moment, we are live on Zoom and YouTube. The sponsors for the event today is Premier Consulting and Investigations Private Limited, and the event is supported by Premier Shield, Tag Scores, India Skills, JMD Cargo, and HubSpot. I'd like to sort of introduce our illustrious president to you. Mr. Sipal Singh has been a very, very senior police officer in the government of India. He served in in several positions across the country, and he's a master's in English literature. He was also tasked by the government of India to start a new organization called the Rapid Action Force, and he was appointed its first chief. He also raised the Internal Security Academy in the Indian state of Rajasthan for training senior government officials in police activities and law and order activities. During his service career, he has been decorated by the President Police Medal for Distinguished Services, for Meritorious Services, Special Duty Medal with Bar, Asana Medal, and numerous other commendations and rewards. After he retired from the police service, he's been very active in business. And in the year 2009, he was recognized by the President of India as the Security Personality of the Year, a very commendable achievement. He currently is also the advisor for the Asian Professional Security Association, the Indian chapter. He is the Honorary Director General of the Central Association of Private Security Industry and the Association of Private Detectives and Investigators. Mr. Sipal is a very well-known face on the Indian TV screens across the country, and his opinion is very well sought after by all reporters from various news channels. This, ladies and gentlemen, was introduction to our president. Today, we have three illustrious speakers and from various walks of life who will be talking to us. The three speakers are Mr. D.P. Singh, who's an HR specialist and a generalist, and Styron from Sweden, and General Deepak Sapra. So we have three different spectrums of people talking to us. Our first speaker will be Mr. D.P. Singh. Mr. D.P. Singh brings with him 40 years of experience as an HR generalist. He partners with businesses for growth, lays foundation for a robust HR function in growing organizations, and enabling transformation into mature ones. He provides mentorship, framework of policies, processes that support robust, optimized growth, change, and organizational development. He is experienced in employee relations, workforce management, talent acquisition, development, and succession planning. He has led cross-cultural teams, knitting them together to deliver business results. He has worked with family-run businesses as well as international companies. DP is currently an employability consultant with Amazon Web Services. He is the chief advisor to HR Policy Association in the United States. He's an advisor to Total Brain Limited, a neuroscience-based mental health and fitness platform. He's on the board of Ethos India Limited and a board member of the Chandigarh University. DP is a quick learner and an acknowledged business leader. He has a master's degree in HR from Punjab University and is a law graduate from the University of Delhi. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. DP Singh. DP, over to you.
So thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, wherever you are, and thanks for joining this webinar. At the outset, I really would like to thank the organization, NISMA, to get me to speak. So thank you so much, and thanks to Mr. Sipal Singh and to Captain Pavan Ahluwalia for really inviting me here. It's indeed a privilege because I know a lot of senior people have joined, and many of them from services. So it's indeed a privilege. Well, this is really a very exciting subject. The more I thought through on this subject, the more excited I became and wanted to speak onto it. It's like saying the beauty lies in the eye of the beholder, right? And I think the problem lies in the mind of the beholder being the observer. So it's a very, very interesting subject. And I was talking to Mr. Sipal Singh on it. First I was saying it's a very philosophical statement. And when I started reflecting on it, and I said, wow, it couldn't be a more practical statement, right? Philosophy comes later on because this has tremendous implications in our day-to-day life. So I said, okay, let me look at and see what is a problem, right? So when we say a problem, what does a problem mean, right? And like all of us do, and I started looking at some literature on it. And one of the definitions that appealed to me, and by the way, there are many definitions, so anybody can pick up, what appeals to them. Anyway, as I said, the problem lies in the mind of the beholder. So as a beholder on the definition of the problem, the way look at it is that a problem can be regarded as the difference between the actual situation and the desired situation, right? The situation or the desired outcome, where what we would have. So there is a desired situation which we want, and then there is an actual situation that we are going through it. So to me, that sort of appealed, and I said, okay, let me take this as my understanding, and I will put my session across on that. But one of the things that, again, as I was thinking through is, this means that in order to identify a problem, I need to have a clear understanding of what is a problem. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that really before a problem really happens, we are actually in a problematic situation. And a problematic situation is very different from a problem. So a problematic situation has been caused by a problem. So if I become aware of my problematic situation, then I know that what is the desired action I want to get out of it and have an outcome. So let me share I'll just share a screen here for the So just let me know if the screen's up there, please.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. So the way we see the problem is the problem. And what I was saying is, let me start from the end, the desired situation that one would like to be in. And then before that, as I said, we are in a problematic situation. Now, to solve that problematic situation, right, I need to take some actions. I need to do some processing. I need to do something about it, right? And by the way, this is not easy because the problem can be a static problem. The problem can be a dynamic problem. And therefore, it brings its own challenges along with it. So therefore, in order to have an appropriate action, in order to have the desired outcome, I must be able to know and define my problem. So I need to define my problem. And the other day, we had a prep call, folks. Before every webinar, it's a normal process. We have a prep call, and I think Major General, who's going to speak about it, he said, okay, I'll touch this subject, so I'm going to leave that. But when I was looking at it, I found there could be more than 40 ways to define a problem. So I said, good, I've left it to a journal because they can manage more complexity than I can. So we need to define a problem, we need to have action processing, and then we get the desired result. So it appears to me that if we are able to do this, we should get the outcome that we want. But defining the problem is also a problem. And there is a step lying before that. There are inputs that are coming into a problem. And the inputs that are coming into defining the problem come from the mind of the beholder. Right? That's what we started with. And then when I started looking at it, I realized, what is it that impacts the mind of a beholder? And I think I'm going to spend some time, which I'm going to be talking to you folks, is on some of those pieces which are there. So one of them is the beliefs and the assumptions that we have. So, let's talk about, we have a problem of COVID in India. The belief that I have is, somebody could have a belief which says, we try to become God, and therefore the problem is that we humans, are being punished, and therefore what I need to do is to pray to God. If I pray to God, maybe God will bless me and nothing will happen. So what it is there, I have the awareness of the situation, but my belief and assumption is something which is very, very different. Now, there could somebody whose belief is, well, there is a problem, right? The belief is, I need a scientific solution. I need to get a vaccine to solve my problem, right? So it's the way you are thinking, it's the way you define, the way you do action, and the way you get your desired outcome. Remember, the final analysis that you want to get out of the problem means you must go to a desired state where you have to be. Now, this is a very example of a COVID, but let me give you an example, a concrete example on beliefs and assumptions, how they come to play in our daily life. If some of you were reading the newspapers in India recently, there's been an article, there's been a rule that has been published by Sebi. Sebi is the government authority which puts a lot of guidelines around this, and which they feel that an independent director, how do we make sure that the director who is on the board is independent? The belief, so first of all, the definition itself is an independent director will not be an independent. So first of all, their belief is all independent directors will align only with the majority people. So that's one belief, and that is where they're coming from, a belief of distrust. So they create a rule and they create something which says, well, one way to make sure that an independent director is more independent is that we should try to get majority of the minority shareholders approve the independent director. So the assumption is, or the belief is, if the majority of the minority approve an independent director who's being nominated on it, then the independent director will be an independent director. Now look at the situation. When you peel the onion, you find that the majority of the minority happens to be the institutions. So if an institutions put together want to say yes or no, they become the empowering and not really the retail, let us say, investor. Now the institutions have a great relationship with the business going on. So what they have done is they have outsourced this work to a proxy agency which does the due diligence and tells it to them. So they're very safe. They say the due diligence says this should be the director and I should, therefore we nominate this person as a director. So the whole belief and the assumption from where we start. So the way we see the problem is the problem. So the problem they saw is independent directors cannot be independent on their own. Independent directors may align with the majority. Independent directors are supposed to be the opposition, right, to the majority directors, rather than thinking that the independent directors can also be aligned to the good of the company. So those are the big challenges that we have. But that is just one piece, which is the assumption and the beliefs. Let me look at another dimension, and which is the values. What values do I nurture will determine the way we see the problem, right? So somebody who believes in shortcuts, for him, the problem, the way he or she looks at it is different than somebody who will be very process driven and so on and so forth. So there are various dimensions. Or for example, ideology. The ideology could really, the ideology that I ingrain, the ideology to which I am part of it will determine. Let us take up the farm laws in the country. All of you across the world would have seen the newspapers full of the protests that's taking place on the farm laws. The ruling government's ideology says, if I bring in the capitalist, I will be able to take the people out of poverty because they will bring in technology, etc., and a lot of support to our farmers. So there's an ideology. They have seen a problem, a situation that they want, which means take the farmer out of poverty, improve the farm output. Therefore, we must bring this law. And here is another set of people or the opposition people who feel, no, let's invest in the farmers and help them build up and use technologies, etc., to get them out of poverty. So the awareness of the problem exists with everyone, including the farmers themselves. But the way we see the problem is the problem, and the way we try to solve the problem is the problem. So definitely when this subject came up, and the more I started thinking, I found it in single inverted commas so interesting. So I went on and thinking what next it could be there. And then I looked at the personal background. Where am I from? Am I from a farmer community? Am I from a service class? Am I capitalist? Have I studied in a village? Have I studied in an urban state? I have come from a convent school. Somebody's come from a government school. And our background will matter on how we perceive a particular issue at hand, right? So somebody who is from an urban area may be looking at a problem differently than somebody who's in a rural area or based on schooling, etc. So I just kept thinking that what a beautiful subject was picked up. And when I started looking at further, I said, oh no, personal background itself is just not sufficient. That doesn't determine the problem. Or what we say is in the mind of the beholder, there's something else. There is this whole piece of personality. There is this whole piece of the subconscious which exists within us. And there are biases that we have, the likes and the dislikes that we have. And they determine, we forget. They are getting embedded in us when we are children, right? They are getting embedded with us in various forms. Now, personality types you can't define. You are born with a certain personality type. If you're a type A, there are many personality types, but in a short way, if you're type A, you're a go-getter. If you're type B, you're relaxed and social. If you're type C, you are the rule-abiding perfectionist. If you're type D, you're distressed and sensitive to others. Now, you tell me if you are going to reflect on, and if you are part of 1%, often we say that all the challenges of diversity and all that we have got, it's all lies in subconscious. Women cannot work, should not work at night. Not work right. Subconscious. Why? Because in the poverty is so way you start looking at it is your subconscious, which starts delivering forces. I can be a rightist, or I can be a leftist, or I can be, and that's ideology, but it's also my likes and dislikes, right? So somebody could like Modi just because he's a great leader, he's a great orator, and somebody may say, what is oration? He's a liar. Again, it's a bias. Each one is carrying their own bias, and the way they're looking at a problem is the way we see the problem. So I thought that would be end of my input that goes into it, but not really. I moved further and I said, oh my God, there are generational differences that exist. And they look at everything so very differently. And the generations, are your baby boomers, your Gen X, your millennials, your Gen Ys, Gen Zs, Gen Alpha. And each one of them look at a problem very differently. And I do not know who all are the participants, but most of us, we would be baby boomers here, including me, because the baby boomers stretches from 1946 to 64. And I fall into that bracket. And they look at things very differently compared to what a generation Z would look at it, and what the Alpha is, which is from year 2005 onwards. How do you think they are going to look at a problem? So thanks to Nismat for bringing up this subject for discussion, because it helped me look at it from a various perspective. And I think when I started looking at this in various perspectives, something else cropped up in my mind, and that was experiences. And I said, oh my God, what a great experience I'm getting today. And I'm going to listen to a lot of people, and the more I look at it, the more interesting it becomes. And by the way, experiences is a very, very big thing when you start talking about it. I was going through it, and they found that rats which were bred, in a cage, and rats which were sort of let into a larger area with a lot of toys and stuff and food to eat, etc. And what started happening is, and this is, by the way, they started looking at it and they found that the rats which were left into an open to experience more had a more developed brain. And you know how this experiment came into being? Was people wanted to understand why was Einstein a genius? And they were trying to dissect his brain and they wanted to look at it. And finally, one of the scientists found out that when you have more experiences and when you let yourself loose in terms of your thinking, you start looking at various dimensions differently. And by the way, the way we see the problem is a problem, I think, is an Einstein statement somewhere or the other, right? Or related to it, or he has commented on it. So I think this was a very, very interesting piece, that how we look at it and look at it. There's another experiment done by a physicist. His name is David Bohm. And what did he do was he put one fish in a jar and he put one camera in the front of the jar and one camera at the end of the jar. Person sitting at a distance was looking at the same fish by two different cameras, and he was looking at that in a very different way, right? So I mean, this is, of course, it talks about implicate order or something which is, Einstein called it a spooky action of a distance. I mean, and this is all about the unseen world, but that was very, very interesting. So I don't know how much time do I have? Do I have 5 minutes more?
No, you have 3 minutes more. You have 3 minutes more.
Okay. So this is really an interesting subject. So education, right? So what my schooling is, what my knowledge is, and how do I bring into play? But with education, there are also comes, before I conclude, the more technology you use, determines what is the problem. People coming from West get amazed with the fact of how our traffic really runs, right? And but then the traffic here runs, right? So there's nothing to worry about it. And it's okay for us to break the red light. It's a different matter that I don't break it even at 1 a.m. at night. But there are people who break it, it doesn't make a difference, and it's acceptable. So how you look at to the desired situation that you want to go to will be an outcome of the reality of the society, its ethics. And by the way, I'm sure somebody is going to talk about it, but when you're talking about defining a problem, there are various ways. You can do 40 ways. You can do a 5 why theory, design thinking, thinking backwards, and more important, lastly, before I close, people have realized that because on the left-hand side, there are so many variables, what do we do to overcome this? How can we reduce it? That's where technology and artificial intelligence has come into it. You feed everything of the problematic situation with all the data that is there. The artificial intelligence, which is hopefully without any of the things on the left, is able to give you an answer which the human being can use his judgment and imaginative and try to arrive at the desired situation or desired end. So the way we really see the problem is all about the mindset. So with this, I would just stop sharing the screen as well as my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DP. What a super talk you had given. Now, the second speaker of the day is a very prominent investigator from Europe. She stays in Sweden and she functions from Stockholm. And I've known Anne for several years now. Anne Styron has worked since the last 34 years as a corporate investigator. She owns her own business called Profile Intelligence in Sweden. She works with investors, risk managers, and consultants who are seeking reliable information as basis for their business decisions. She also owns an online platform called Columbi Knowledge that allows groups of people to have their own say about a situation. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Anne Styron.
Well, it's an honor to be here, but I have to admit I feel a little bit scared having to jump in the footsteps of DP Singh. What an excellent presentation you gave, and thank you so much, my dear friend Pawan and Mr. Sipal Singh, for inviting me here. I'm really honored. And as Pawan has written, do put any questions in the chat form if you'd like. So going into this presentation, I realized that the only way I can really do it in a good way is to ask for your help. We're going to do a little experiment all together. So I'd like you to do is to sit down and relax and take a deep breath. And then think about a problem that you're facing, something that might be on top of mind right now, something that might bother you. So think about that for a little while, a couple of seconds. And when you've done that and you have the problem in front of your mind, and make a little change and start to think about it as questions instead. Ask your brain, who, where, what might assist me in solving the problem? And I think, and I hope, that by actually doing this little change, you will move from the big black cloud in one end of the screen where something feels dangerous and a little bit bad, and you will move to a place with more sunshine. At least for me, when I do this exercise, I really feel that my body relaxes and moves into another state with more creativity. And I find that the presentation we just heard moves exactly into what I'm going to talk to. I'm going to pick up almost piece by piece the things that DP spoke about, but from another perspective. So the brain, where we start, the brain loves questions. It's true that the brain really goes into overdrive and wants to help us find a solution. So we must help the brain in helping it to find another way to see the problems we have in front of us. And we all know that our thoughts are not real. Our thoughts are the imagination playing tricks on us. And we can change the way we think. It's not easy. Anyone who's tried to stop thinking knows how difficult that is. But we can help the brain to find new ways, new paths of brain function in helping us to find new ways. And I think you might know of Daniel Kahneman, the Nobel Prize winner. He did an experiment by using frowns or facial expressions. And he found that if you smile and look happy or frown, you actually have an impact on your performance. You don't have to feel the smile honestly inside. You can just paste it on your face and it works. Your brain will help you to do things in a more positive way. And by the way, as we are in COVID times and things are tough for many of us, remember that smiles are also contagious, but in a much better way. So smile and it will spread. So moving from Daniel Kahneman and the neuroscience, which is pretty heavy, I would like to introduce you to someone that I think that many of us in the same generation will remember. And this is the Swedish children's character Pippi Longstocking. If you're familiar with her, you will remember that she is a very obnoxious little girl who does exactly what she pleases at every time. But she also has quite a few very clever statements, and one of them is this one: I've never tried this before, so I'm quite sure I'll manage very well, I'll succeed. And maybe it's only characters in children's books that can have that kind of immense self-confidence. But if we can grasp hold on just a little bit of that, we might look at the problem in a different way. But how we look at things, as we've already been introduced to it depends on so many things. For example, our standpoint in life. And for example, you know the old saying about the glass being either half empty or half full, depending on how you look at it. But think of the fact that the glass is actually always full, because part of it is filled by air. So another way of looking at something, not either or, but neither, and in the middle. So as our president mentioned, we need to go from the inside to the outside. So I'll move on and take us from who we are and our point of view to where we are in a larger context, also looked upon by DP's presentation, where so many things depend on how we attack a problem or deal with a problem. So this picture from actually a park in France, for me signalizes a sort of calm, curious, confident point of view. And if I take that with me and I look at where I am, what is my context, what is the situation I'm in? What kind of organization am I in? What kind of cultural context am I in? Does my culture, the culture that I'm in, support me being creative and yes, I can do this and, you know, finding new ways? Someone once told me that it's very important to know what makes a hero in your organization. And if you think about it, it depends on your organization's culture if it allows and can allow happy input and new ideas and progressive thinking or not. You need to know. But there is also something such as the ideology, also looked upon before. And looking at the picture, Bhutan comes to mind. You know, the country where gross national happiness and the 9 pillars of GNH are equally important or even more important than GNP and the global pillars. And we can look upon these things and say, what kind of culture, what kind of ideology, what kind of rules and regulations define how brave I can be in my problem solving? But let's be honest, not all professions can be creative. I know we have a lot of military people in the audience, that for once I wouldn't have a lot of soldiers running around being creative, and neither would I like my bus driver to suddenly decide, hey, I got a new idea. I think I'll take a shortcut today. And suddenly a lot of bus stops are not longer on the route. I think people would be screaming. So we cannot just do as we please. We have to look at it from a cultural context, which also leads me forward to the international aspect, which I was asked to look upon a little bit. As I have worked, as my friend Pawan said, for, oh my God, it's 35 years now, as an international investigator, I know how many problems, it's so easy to fall into traps and, you know, based on culture, on tradition, on holidays or work weeks. We take for granted and easily assume that things are the same for you as they are for me. Some of these assumptions are helping us. It helps us to manage daily life. We know that the bus normally takes the same route every day. We can trust that and assume we'll get to work in time. But there are other things that we need to be careful of having an open mind to and accept, and also invite knowledge about others' traditions and things. Look at the holidays for Christmas that is known all over the world now, even independent on your own tradition, but there's lots of holidays that we need to be aware of when we work internationally. I envy some countries in Asia with their Golden Week, for example. So the background where we're from also ties into, as I say, assumptions and preconceptions. Another topic, I'll just mention it to you, put it in your mind, are acronyms. How I hate acronyms. Because we often assume that the acronym is understood exactly the same by everybody. But of course, they aren't. The same three-letter acronym can mean a lot of different things. So that is when I bring onto the table here that we have to check that everybody is on board and that everybody understands. And the embedded bias mentioned by DP was something that I also had on my notes here that I'm reading from, or to keep me in line and on track. I call it backbone culture, the thing that you're born with that feels so natural that you don't even consider it being culture because it's me. One of my actually worst experiences when I started out, we're now talking late 80s, early 90s, I was at an international meeting face-to-face in France and listening to a group of gentlemen discussing something, and it was quite a heated debate. And standing there from the side, young, inexperienced, I have to say that so that you understand my mistake, but I was so eager to help them. Maybe it's my Scandinavian ways of wanting to help, of finding consensus, of moving things forward, being efficient. So I interrupted them and say, gentlemen, I think I have a solution to your discussion. It took me 6 years to repair that error, because they all knew the solution, of course, but they enjoyed the discussion, the debate. I assumed I understood them. I had no clue. Another story of a similar kind, and this is also from quite a few years ago, but it is a good example of how an assumption can put you into trouble. The pharmaceutical company had produced a new kind of headache pill, and we all have headaches from time to time. Now, they have decided to go into a completely new market, and they knew that in this market, illiteracy is a problem. So what to do? Okay, we'll do a cartoon in order to explain how fantastic our headache pill really is. So the first picture is of a man having a headache and it's so bad. And then you see him with a glass and the pills in a hand. He takes it and then bright sunshine. Everything's fine. Headache's gone. Wonderful. Easy to understand. But in this region, they don't read from left to right. They read from the right to the left. So yeah, you see the thing. Happy man having a pill and feeling bad. It didn't really work so well. And it's just the way that you take something for granted that doesn't really work. So we have to continuously ask questions to go from where we are to where we want to be. Asking questions isn't easy. Now, if I want to ask a question because I invite you to dinner, it would be lovely to see you at dinner. Are you coming? Easy question, easy answer. Fixed question, straight answer, yes or no. But if I'd like to know if you would prefer to have water, milk, soda, wine, or whatever to your meal, it would be a very long list for you to cross and maybe multiple answer. And it's going to be very problematic. The better thing is to ask you an open question. What do you prefer to drink? Because then I will have your individual answer is to what is best for you. And this ties into the fact that if we are going to go from a problematic situation where things are complicated, we don't really see the problem, but we have already found out that there's lots of things that influence how we define the problem. And by asking ourselves questions and others questions, we will help our brain to find a good way forward. So it all ties together. And let me tie it further on to the workplace. Because if truth be told, and you ask a question to a group of people in your company or in your surroundings, if you ask a fixed question, do you get answers that answer your assumptions and your assumed beliefs? Or do you get answers what really is the problem? And this is, I apologize, but this is my little flag for Columbia, which is it's a way to actually make people or give them the opportunity to answer an open question with their own words, so that in order to solve the problem, you actually look at the current, correct, truthful situation in order to move forward. So the takeaway of this, apart from being a lovely view over the Baltic Sea, it is that using the starting points that DP gave us about all the input that is needed to understand where we are, looking at ourselves and our assumptions, helping our brain to sort us out, well, we'll get there in the end. So I hope this has given you a little bit of input on how we can move forward, and the sky is the limit. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much. And what a wonderful talk you've given with so many takeaways for everybody. And now it's time for the third speaker to be introduced. We have a retired former general from the Indian Army speaking to us. Major General Deepak Sapra is a veteran general from the Indian Army. He was commissioned into the Indian Army in 1978. He's a BSc in agriculture, Bachelor's of Science in Agriculture. He's a master's from the Madras University in defense subjects. And he has done 2 MPhil degrees, one in management and the other in strategy. Besides, he's attended several Army courses, Army professional courses, including the National Defense College, which is a very coveted course that only a few people get to do. He has been a fellow at the Center for Strategic Studies and Simulation in New Delhi, India. He was selected to train the armed forces of the island nation of Seychelles. In his second career, he has served for 7 years as the managing director of Army Welfare Placement Organization, where he was involved in facilitating jobs for retired or retiring ex-servicemen. He is currently the managing director of India Skills, his company supporting the event of today. He has vast experience of working with the National Skills Development Council for the training of employability of ex-servicemen. Over to you, General Sapra.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks, Nismat. Thanks the chair, President Mr. Sipal Singh, and the coordinator and the moderator, Captain Pawan sir. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard a very structured talk by DP and a very deep, scenic talk by Anne. The speakers have covered the entire canvas, and very eloquently they've covered the topic. Now my problem is that how do I see this problem and how do I address it? So when I was asked to give this topic or speak on this topic, the first thing that you rush is for some material. So my presentation will be totally military and army based. So you rush for the material, and you rush for the material to whom? You don't go to God, you go to Google. So I also went to Google, and to my horror, I found only one book written by some lady, Lisa, and I could make out, and I said, Deepak Sapra, this topic has no easy answers, or else there would have been about 100 books on this topic. So the first lesson learned was that the problem is your problem, and any problem is a problem for you if you are party to it. I'll keep repeating this word. A problem is a problem to you if you are party to it. So carry it on in your head if you are party to it. Now comes the second basic question. I thought for myself, are there different types of problem? Or there is only one problem? So I went to learned people and I went to noble people, had a big discussion with them, and again reached to a conclusion that a problem could be a money problem, it could be a property problem, it could be an official problem, it could be a boyfriend, girlfriend problem. But remember one thing, are you party to it? If the answer is yes, then please carry on. So I conclude that everyone has his own problem. So obviously, every individual will see this problem differently. Now, you heard the definition from DP. Same thing, but I'll spell it out in a military way. What is a problem? Very simple. The gap between what you have and what you desire. Period. If you can fill up this gap, the problem is over. So, ladies and gentlemen, my talk will not be as structured as what DP has done, and my talk will not be with as scenic beauties what Anne has showed. It will be a very dull military talk without any slides. And what really I'm doing is that you've learned the lesson, you've learned the chapter, I'll just be revising it now for you. As DP said, you got to first identify the problem. Now, since the basket of problem is not finite, let's first identify it. And why do we say that identify the problem? Why do we want to classify this as a problem? Because at times we make mistake. The problem may not actually be a problem. It may be a challenge. It may be a dilemma. It might be a predicament. These are nothing else but synonyms. But a synonym is not the problem. A problem is a problem. Let me give you a small example. It's the evening time, getting late. You are driving in the woods in a hurry to reach a town, and the name of the town is Dreamland. And you hit a Y junction. Now there are no signboards like New Delhi, and you don't know whether to go left or right. So if you go left, you have a faint idea of that place. So if you go left, then you'll reach your location in 40 minutes. The road is good. But if you take the right road, you may again reach in about 20, 25, 30 minutes, but the road is broken. There are problems en route. Now you tell me, is this a problem or is this a dilemma? Should I take a left road or a right road? Or is this a predicament? Okay, so this is not a problem. Let's carry on with this example a step ahead. Again, late in the evening, you are getting late and anxiety is developing, and again you hit the same Y junction. And again you have got to go to Dreamland. If you take the left road, it'll take half an hour and you reach Dreamland. But if you take the right route, you reach Timbuktu. Now this is a problem. So what I'm trying to say is identify or reaching to conclusion what is the real problem. Let me tell you, it's no easy task. But if you can pinpoint the key issue, half the problem is solved. So being a military man, I will not only stop at, how you think about it. I will definitely give you a bit of a sprinkling of solving the problem, because the army man is not an army man till the time it doesn't give a solution. So how do we do that? Let's mull over it and put the problem in context. So there is a problem. So what do we already know? We know something about the problem. And what do we want to know? Set the objectives for your solution and we'll try and reach there. But how? There are certain things which we can do. We can do brainstorming. We can do brain scratching. We can do segregation of the things. But let's start with the word problem. The first three words of the problem, alphabets of the problem are P-R-O. If you take that, it is pro and means professional. So please concentrate on three alphabets and take any problem professionally. The first and the first more thing for a problem is please accept it. Please accept it. That there is a problem. Take responsibility for your problem and start thinking in the language you dream. Start collecting, second point, start collecting information, start collecting data, but avoid making assumptions. For problem to be understood, you can't assume. Be professional. And third thing, study the environment, study the surroundings or the condition and turn your problem into a question. You'll understand the problem better. Everybody will see it differently. I'll come to that a bit later. If possible, break the problem into smaller pieces. It'll come handy as I progress. And one of the methodology to understand a problem and how you see it, whether you are right or wrong, is a methodology of going and seeking assistance, taking somebody's help. My word of caution, please go and seek assistance and help on the lighter side for people who are above 70. Very recently, I've noticed people below 70 are still young at heart and settling down. We have a gentleman in America called Bill Gates, and we have a gentleman in India called Harish Salve. They're still settling down. So don't land up with such people. Okay, they're still settling down. And such situations seeking help from people is good for family disputes. While you are seeing the problem in a different fashion, please never remove your eye from the problem. Since ultimately you have to solve the problem because it is your problem, your 80% of the time should be pinpointed towards finding solutions, thinking about it. You are thinking it differently, I agree, but then you've got to solve it one day. Why you see it differently, why you solve it differently, and how you solve it. So there is a lady in Australia, she wrote a book, Secret. Her name is Rhonda Byrne. The spelling is B-Y-R-N-E, Rhonda Byrne. Now she says, there is a problem and there is a solution. So what you are thinking, you are not the first person to have this problem. This problem has been there in the universe for ages. And in the universe, you may call it a magnetic field, you may call it a cosmic energy, you may call him God, whatever. So when you are looking at a problem, that problem is being looked by that magnetic field also. And we may call it cosmic energy. Now, when you are looking at a problem, that problem is being looked by somebody else and manifesting your desires. And that is how you will reach to an answer to the problem. Now, every man has one brain, so every man has to see the problem differently. But when you come to solving, there are some energies playing on you, helping you out and identifying the problem. Since you are doing it individually, the cosmic energy is also connecting to you individually. And she called this Secret and the Law of Attraction. Worth reading book, no harm done. And a opportunity word I'm using is, when you see a problem, try and learn a lesson or two from this problem. In fact, when we are having a pre-chat before this talk, I think Captain Pawan Ahluwalia said, we must carry some lessons from the problem. He casually said, and I totally agree with him. And I can give you a small example. When you see a problem, I can talk of India. There is corona everywhere and COVID has to go one day. But I am very hopeful it may leave behind a robust medical infrastructure in India. So you see the problem and the answers will also keep coming. towards you. So now what we've done, we've defined the problem, we've identified the problem, we've segregated the problem, and we have started seeing it differently. As I said, why does everybody see it differently? Because it is your internal mind and external agencies, they come together, and that is how you are reaching towards the conclusion or the answer. Because you are seeing it differently, you are finding a different answer. And that is why this man shouted in the bathtub, Eureka! And he was Archimedes. And he shouted and ran out of the bathtub as if he's found the answer, because he saw the problem differently as an individual. As I said, I'll give you a bit of a sprinkling of solutions also. You know, thinking is individual, but there have to be some ways, corporate or the organizational problem or the industry problems, you know. There's some problem with my internet, I believe. Anyway, I only hope you can hear me out, sir. So what happens in a professional, organizational, or a corporate culture? They have 5 steps or 7 steps of solving a problem. They are looking at chronic or recurring problems, permanent things. So they have a structure called 8D. And 8D is nothing but 8 disciples or 8 critical steps. So there is a 8D mechanism. They call it a tool, 8D tool. And they have one more tool, which is called DMAIC. It is DMAIC, they call it a DMAIC. That is for continuous improvement. I will not dwell at them at all because they are existing in the Google. Please go through it. I will come down to seeing a problem as a common man and solving the problem as a common man. Let me tell you, a common man sees the problem in a very simple manner, unlike corporates. He knows there is no one way to climb a mountain. So similarly, he also defines the problem, identifies the problems, and now to solve the problem, he goes into options. What are the options to climb on this mountain? Having segregated, having selected the options, he segregates them. And then he starts the procedure of deletion. He narrows it down. Having narrowed it down, he prioritizes it, takes 1 or 2 options, good or bad, then he takes his call. Thinking about a problem, the way you think, there are so many means. But when I say there is one more typical thing that can be added of how you see a problem is your risk appetite. Everybody has a risk appetite for something or the other. And I'll give you an example of a monetary problem. If a child loses 100 Indian rupees, start crying and reach home, the child will reach home and money for the child. But we tell the parents, they say, no, there was much more. He saw the problem in a different fashion. And my recommendation would be, incorporate everything to everything. This much I can absorb, and you will start seeing the problem in a different fashion. The military man, of course, if I don't use the army way of solving or seeing the problem, the topic will not be complete. The basic parameters remain the same, but the catch with the army way of seeing and solving the problem, that he takes it head on. First thing in the morning, he segregated the problem into 4 or 5 pieces. He'll pick up the heaviest piece, the most difficult problem, and take it head on and try and solve it. Mark my word, if that first section is solved, balance 4 or 5 will fall in their own place. Why he does that? Because he's very clear. He is the one who has to solve the problem. And he is seeing it differently. And they say, God helps those who help themselves. You see the problem, you solve the problem. You can do brainstorming, provided there is time. But end of the day, the decision is again yours. How can an army man solve the problem? Because he looks for alternatives. Any problem, please call the army. You think army is coming with a magic vein or something? No. They come and they apply for alternatives. And they find a successful alternative in this. A small example, when in army, we are required to do a commando course. So when we go for a commando course, there is a navigational march. You got to march alone for almost 10 to 15 kilometers through jungles and mountains with a map and a compass. And it is known that you are bound to lose your route. So our instructor tells us, if you lose the track, don't get worried. Sit under a shady tree, if there is one, pull out your water bottle, have water, have a cigarette if you can pinch you one, and think of some good things in life. After 5 minutes, shake up yourself, give a fresh thought, and mark my word, you will get the answer. And it is a time-tested thing. Time is coming closer. Let me taper my discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, please look back in your life and see past 20, 30, 40 years. How did you see the problem? You saw it differently. I think, again, this internet is giving a bit of a problem, though it is showing all click here. So your problems of 20, 30, 40 years, has it been solved? Have you really been able to resolve all, or have you parked and some you left or compromised by saying, oh, it's God's wish, and you have learned to live with it? Or are you really seeing it differently? The problem is still that you're seeing it different. When we say we see it differently, actually we are compromising in a different manner. Thank God it's only a fracture. The chap could have died. Thank God he got 40% marks and he has passed. He could have failed. This is a statement my mother made always for me. Anyway, this too shall also pass. This is another way of seeing the problem. This too shall pass. You're not looking at the problem. You're not solving this too shall pass. Anyway, so what do you carry home from this webinar, which you never knew earlier? And the answer is nothing. You only realized that others also have similar problems, but they see it differently. And now onward, it may ease your dealing or healing of seeing the problem. That was not my conclusion. My conclusion is a true story, which I'll conclude with. And the story is about a spacecraft, spaceship, Apollo 13. So everybody knows Apollo 11, the man Armstrong landed on the moon, successful mission. Apollo 12, a very successful mission. Apollo 13, there was a faux pas. There was a faux pas somewhere in 1970, and the spaceship could never land. So Apollo 13 was adapted into a movie starring, there's Tom Hanks in the movie, who narrates the story of NASA's aborted moon mission. So an explosion occurs in the spaceship, the oxygen tanks of the spaceship, and this put the lives of the astronauts in danger. Now, it is forcing the crew to try to make their way back on Earth without landing on the moon. And the tagline for the movie is, Houston, we have a problem. It's a good line for a movie blurb and captures the danger and the drama. But the line that truly turned the situation around was a question that NASA Mission Control, Gene Kras, asked right after the explosion in the oxygen tanks. Mark the word control. He asked, what have we got in that ship that is still good? This is perhaps the best question to ask at a time when the chips are down and everything has gone overwhelmingly wrong. Focusing only on the enormity of a disaster can paralyze us and lead to inaction. But identifying and focusing on what is still working and within our control empowers us to look at the problems differently and find solutions differently. By asking, what have we got in that ship that's good? The mission control and the Apollo 13 astronauts figured out a way to keep everyone on board alive. They made a makeshift carbon dioxide filters using containers and duct tape. These things were available on the ship, and they could manage to throw out the carbon dioxide from the ship and get the astronauts back safely on the Earth. Apollo 13 astronauts survived the mission because the control asked the right question. That's why the reason of knowing the question. Now, my concluding lines, that today ladies and gentlemen, is a good time to ask ourselves similar question, identify the question and see the question in a different way. You are your own mission controller and you see it differently. My first point is, what do we have in our lives that is still good? 2, what is still working that we can build on regardless of what has gone wrong? 3, what are our strengths? And lastly, what is the next thing we can do? Ladies and gentlemen, mark my word, you will start seeing the problem differently. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I finished.
Thank you very much, Deepak. What a wonderful talk. I will now request some audience people to sort of ask questions, but I'd just like to make 1 or 2 statements. A problem is a problem only if you choose to see it. A problem is a problem only if you choose to see it. Then I've heard some people say, why do I seem to have a problem with everything? There are some people in our offices, in our colleagues, in our thing, who see a problem in anything that they are confronted with. There are some people who do not wish to see a problem. And there are some people who want to recognize a problem. With these words, I'd like to jump over to Vishnu Sultania and request him to ask his question.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving me an opportunity of asking this question. After listening to the 3 very, very seasoned and serious panelists, one thing was coming to my mind, that we are talking about problem and probably the problem solving mechanism through perceptions and the value of our culture, experience, knowledge, and whatever we can say. Only one thing I would like to say, that probably we could have saved Kalpana Chawla if we could have realized that there is a problem, and realization of that problem, if they could have solved that problem or find a solution, probably we could have saved Kalpana Chawla today. So my only observations to the panelists or to the audience is that most of the time we see the problem and we do not see the intensity of the problem and do not apply our mind the repercussions of not solving that problem. Whenever we run the organizations also, or even including our family life, most of the problem when it erupts, we allowed it to simmer, and when it simmers, it goes out of the control, and sometimes we do not know how to solve the problem. So if we can just find the root cause of the problem, the origin when it is small, and if we solve it, then probably it could be solved much easily with less of energy and time. Thank you, sir.
Oh, that's a statement. It wasn't a question, actually. In the audience, we have Dr. John with us today. He's a former veteran Army colonel who jumped into the HR stream after serving several years in the Indian Army. John, please ask your question. You got to unmute yourself.
I need to take you almost 60 years back when I was a teenager. They say that knowledge comes from most unexpected quarters and often from people whom you hate. You know, this used to be Sunday mornings where our parents forced us to go to Sunday school. And we used to attend that, and this was normally taken by a lady whom all of us used to hate, because that was the time when we would be playing football. So we were forced to sit. But one of the pieces which this lady said is, first find out if it is a problem or whether it is your problem. The moment it becomes a problem, you look at it differently. And the second thing which she used to say is that you should always ask, what would God do if he was in your predicament? What would your dad do if he was in this predicament? Do you think that this is a way of role play which will give you answers to solve a problem? That was my question.
DP, would you like to take this on, please?
I think very, very Very valid question. And I think role plays are important in resolving problems, right? Especially when they are pretty individual based. And I think organizations do use this. So yes, the answer is yes. I could give you an example, I mean, in the sense from the industry, where pharma industry example, where there's a hell of a lot of competition. There's a hell of a lot of competition for generic products and generic medicines. And question is, how do you increase your market share? You could, dropping price makes no sense. Investing more in marketing, possibly yes, but it's a very expensive proposition. Is there something else that you can do? And I think applying certain principles of design thinking and looking at it from a customer end, which is a role play, right? So when they started looking at it from a customer end, they found that a lot of medicines which we buy, the strips, after some time we use some, the remaining go waste because you can't see the expiry date. So what you do is you end up throwing it. So there's a waste at the end of the customer. So they decided that the stamping of the expiry date should be at a corner. So even if you were to take out the tablet from the strip, the expiry date is still visible. So when the customer started looking at that from a customer point of view, they would prefer to buy a almost similar costing medicine, but they'll buy one which they know that at least the expiry date is visible. So role plays are an important piece. You can do it in various forms from a design thinking concept as a customer base or whatever it is there. So yeah, good question. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much. Anne, would you like to add something?
Yes, I would. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And I also really like the question. And I would like to add that actually you can do this also yourself. There's various forms where you yourself, you actually physically, you set up a bunch of chairs around you and you say that you have a conflict with your brother. And you sit on your chair and you speak out loud about your problem. And then you go across the room and sit on the other chair and pretend to be the brother. What's his view on the case? And the mother and the sister or the wife or the daughter or whatever. And as you walk around, you are forced to see things from another point of view. So that is the home role play of solving problems by stepping into other people's shoes. Not easy, but very interesting. Thank you.
General Sapra, what are your views on it?
Sir, John Chinatala's problem is solved. I know him. With two speakers answered this question, I've got nothing more to add.
All right. I think we are running out of time also. And I'd like to just sort of thank the speakers. We have had very diverse speakers coming from the HR industry, from the investigating industry, and from the military aspect of things. Thank you all. And now back to the President for his concluding remarks.
After these scintillating talks, I may not have to add much, but I will only say that DP has gone to one particular aspect. We gave the subject where you look at the problem, and he has very beautifully analyzed on that particular point. The way you look, what can be the reasons, your ethical, your religious, your assumption, beautifully described that particular. And has beautifully described how from inside to outside. And General Sapra has given a holistic view as to what is the solution. Simple, what is the solution? Problems are problems, and how to reach. A very robust sort of talk he has given from the background, his army background. But by and large, I like to wind up with one or two points which you all might have known. No, the problem is that your perspective has to change in consonance with the perspective of the person who is posing a problem or whom you think is posing a problem. Now, I give you a very small, most of you must have read a small instance. A child, 1-year-old child, he was just learning his first steps. And all of a sudden, he falls down, starts crying. He doesn't walk further. He said, no, I'll be hurt. I mean, mentally, he thinks that he is hurt. He doesn't want to. So his mother, very educated, modern mother, also, so the problem is this carpet is not properly laid down. Take away the carpet. She tells the servant, take away the carpet. Okay. Father comes, he says, no, my child is hurt. My goodness, it is very bad. The flooring is not proper. I have to redo the flooring. The grandmother came and she says, let me talk to the child. She talks to the child by saying one word, my child, why are you crying? You are not hurt. Actually, there was a small ant which was taking a grain here, and you have hurt him and you have smashed him. So you are a brave boy. You have not done anything. He gets up and starts walking. The question is how you look at that particular. He is getting scared that I may not be hurt. The mother has from her heart told her that how can I understand and deal with him without it? It's a normal thing. I mean, in our country, normally in Punjabi, you say, kuch nahi hua, kidi mar gayi hai. That sort of thing is problem solving. It depends as to how you look at the problem from other perspective. Nowadays, in neurosciences, it is a very well-known thing that empathy should be introduced, which we all and has at length projected that how you look at not sympathy, the empathetic attitude as to what is exactly the problem with the child, problem with the man, problem with the particular patient, and why he is behaving like. So neurophysicians have started looking at the problem of this psychoanalysis, that what is the problem is that you start treating him from empathetic attitude. So my submission is, the erudite speakers have done very well because we had limited time and limited scope to talk. So the first speaker talked at length about what is the reason, how we look at the problem. The second speaker gave a from inside out, that is from the heart. And third speaker gave holistically. I think this problem solving is a great subject. It has aroused a lot of interest. I think we also now should get, if there's a problem, what is the solution? Then probably the entire gamut of activities will be covered. With these words, I indeed thank all the three speakers for their very scholarly talk and talking eloquently, some from the heart, some from brain, some from their experience. I'm so grateful to them that they came on our invitation and addressed the ideas. I'm also thankful to the delegates who attended this session with us for 1.5 hours. Our next webinar is due on 4th June. There are other interesting subjects. The entrepreneur dash need of understanding, again, psychology of safety. Another very interesting subject for you all to deliberate and think and probably contribute to our effort. Need of understanding psychology of safety, that it is a success for entrepreneur also if you understand it. And this is due on the 4th of June at 6 p.m. same time. And we hope to get again some very erudite speakers. And I'll request all the delegates present here and also the speakers present here that try to spare some time either to go to a YouTube where there is live streaming coming of this, or you may like to see this after getting registered. This is your chance. And thank you very much indeed, Paman, for giving me an opportunity to introduce these subjects, because I was very fond of giving this subject the one which has evoked so much scintillating approach from all the three speakers. And very rightly, I would again say that they are really, really, really very good in their own efforts and their own field, and very, very holistic view have been given. Thank you very much, all the speakers, as well as the delegates. Thank you indeed.
One of the things that I'd like to mention is that one needs to ask critical questions to solve problems. So I think that's another issue that we need to be looking at, Mr. President, is what are the critical questions that you need to ask to solve any problem that comes up. And thank you very much. We look forward to the next webinar and look forward to interacting with all of you whenever we can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, DP and Ann. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well done, speakers.
All right, Rakesh sir. Bye. Bye, Ravi.
Bye, Pawan. Excellent.
Sabra
As
Sahib, you
usual.
have floored us. Not that
Sipal
you
ji
have
was
floored all of
excellent
us.
as usual.
Beautiful. I expected this. I told Pawan. I said, oh, I've heard you once earlier also. You have flowed.
Very good.
Practical,
Good.
robust, common sense approach.
I was speaking to the computer. I've never spoken in my life like this, sir.
That's right. Google
I couldn't see anybody.
Google Maharaj did not come to your help.
Google Maharaj is a very dangerous item, sir.
I'm leaving, sir. I'm leaving. I'm going off.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, CP, sir. Thank you, Pawan, sir. Lumba, sir. Thank you, sir.
Bye, well done. Good show.
Right, Lumba, sir.
See you. Bye.
Bye, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Bye, John.
Vijay sir, bye.
Thank you.
Vijay sir, bye-bye.
Bye,
Bye.
sir.
Good night, sir. Good night, sir. Prasad.
Right, John. Bye-bye, John. How are you?
Bye-bye. Good, sir. Very
Yeah, I knew John Chinatra is there. Don't worry.
good. Yes,
Great.
sir. Wonderful to see you again.
Bye, sir. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.